Well, yeah, we're back.
We are back after a brief hiatus because life is a pain in the ass sometimes. But here we are with World's Strongest Opinions, episode 35 with Derek Owens. Almost screwed your name up.
Pretty simple. That you went out of your way for that.
Pretty hard one to screw up.
Yeah.
Derek
Pretty
Owens,
generic.
promoter extraordinaire, man. Welcome
Wow,
to the
what a
show.
title.
Yeah. I was telling him, I was like, you're one of the best promoters in Texas. Possibly, actually the best, I'd say, objectively.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate that.
I was like,
yeah. Well, I think you're getting a bit of what am I trying to say? People know you, man. I keep hearing.
I'm hoping that I keep that reputation going in the most positive way possible.
Yeah, you're building a good reputation. I mean, even Luke Davies has made some positive comments about you. So that's worldwide.
Yeah,
that's not bad from little old Texas.
Yeah. I mean, isn't Texas like the same size as England? But
yeah.
Anyways, that's another podcast.
Probably the size of like 5 Englands.
Yeah, we're huge.
Luke Davies is actually a guy.
Davis. I said it. It's Davis. Damn it. Luke Davis.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
It's
Here,
Davis.
Let's cut this out. He probably won't even start watching this early on. So just Mr. or it's Sir. It's Lord Luke. Isn't he a lord over there in Wales?
Probably.
He should be.
He should be though. But I use him. He's definitely in my circle of opinions. I bounce ideas off of for some time now. I met him in 2001 at Worlds, man, and ever since then, it's just a guy I could really trust. And if I ever am unsure about anything or I just need to bounce some ideas off of, I definitely go to him. So, really good guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, he's a good friend of the show. Everything. Figure it's coming up on the Kaos Classic, so figured it would be nice to have you on, but also to like talk about exactly what you do to like run a good show, because at least every time I've checked, you have a full roster, 100 competitors, big wait list. Everyone wants to do it. And then like half of Texas is wondering why like their shows don't fill up despite like triple booking weekends and such.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. And at the end of the day, a lot of it's subjective. More or less the direction that we all kind of want to take the sport to is kind of where the answers lie.
Yeah. I think it makes a big
What
difference.
are the answers? Where do the answers lie? Where do you start?
Yeah, I think a good question is to actually like, where are we in the sport? Where is the sport? My biggest focus is the amateur scene. And a lot of people, they get caught up in what they see with the big shots. Like I'm talking about like the Shaw and the big boys at the top though. And what the pros are doing isn't what the amateur scene seems to be working on. You know what I'm saying? And that's my biggest focus, being a local amateur promoter myself, though. So that's kind of where my focus lies. It's totally different because you're not working with 20 pros. I'm working with like 100 athletes sometimes, though. And kind of cultivating a good atmosphere. It's totally different than what you do if you just had one weight class. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah. Does that include like the format of events? And I guess my thoughts, the big difference to me between pros and worlds and amateur is still learning the basics. How do you feel about the necessity to have these crazy events at amateur shows versus having them still focusing on the basics to build that foundation?
Man, I love seeing crazy events. I love seeing unique events. I love seeing different events, and that's what makes strongman beautiful. You know what I'm saying? There's not a squat, bench, deadlift. There's not a jerk and there's not key components of the sport that make it. I believe anything that's well thought out and well constructed can be fantastic. That being said, a lot of amateur promoters, they just don't test out their events. They have these ideas, but to really have it come into fruition and actually cultivate a good event takes practice and a lot more thought than just like some harebrained idea, And
Absolutely.
too many times do I see really like on paper, you seem like, dude, this comp's going to be awesome. It's got some crazy cool events. And then you're like, how are they going to execute this? I mean, ideally a good, crazy event, they're like ideally like 20 competitors to get through smoothly. But if you're going to have a good cap between like 50 and 80 competitors, you need a well constructed and well thought out event that's going to just flow through it. You know what I mean?
Right. And something that's not going to fall apart or get damaged. And then that's the worst. I mean, in my experience, and as an amateur way back when, is when somebody only had one implement for the entire field and it didn't make it through the show. And then you're down an event, or you have to like improvise on the fly.
Yes. And these come into a good promoter. A good experienced promoter is not only not letting your equipment fall apart, but it's also planning ahead and understanding like what can this equipment handle. Dude, I've been at a competition before. I am not going to name any names and name any competitions though, but I've been at a competition before where less than 10 people, I don't know the exact number, but like there weren't even 10 people to do this event, and it was a sandbag loading, and what it was built on just collapsed, and they had to squirm around. They had to go grab some drills. And at the end of the day, the first red flag would have been it was made of wood. It was made of wood, and I wish I could have taken a picture though of it. But it was made of like a couple 2x4s and a piece of like plywood on top of it, and it was insane.
Here's the funny thing though about strongman. It's so small. Even though you don't say names, they know who they are.
I mean, honestly, you're not lying. If the person who put on that show is watching this right now, they know exactly who they are.
They know exactly who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyways, and that being said, I've made my fair amount of mistakes. I've made mistakes over the years. I've been doing this for almost 7 years now. I had the opportunity to get started at Metroflex Plano with Chris Close. Took me under his wing, and I just fell in love instantly. I love the idea of planning things. I love promoting. Anyways, that being said, I've made some mistakes, and I've learned from my mistakes, and I've pushed through those things. And what really hurts for me to see is I feel like at this point, I've been promoting in Texas longer than anybody else that's promoting right now. All the other promoters, I've been doing it longer. And what's upsetting is I want the sport to grow. And to do so, we need more competitions, more thoroughly planned out competitions. And what I don't see happening is people like reaching out for advice. Like just a couple weekends ago, there was an event that I've done before. I've done it before. And I know the person who put on this show has never done this before. And they never once reached out. And I feel like it's like an ego thing. And I would have loved to have helped. I would have loved to give my feedback on making sure that this event went through without a hitch. And unfortunately, it did not. There were a lot of mistakes. There were a lot of variables that the athletes were the ones that suffered. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, when it comes to any event that's not thoroughly planned out, the athlete always suffers. And that's what really, really hurts. You understand?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I'm a little bit more of a mind of less competition and higher quality, like quality over quantity, because I think that's where amateurs really suffering is that the quantity is so great because there's no, as we talk about a lot on this show, is standards. There's no standards for promoters. They just pay their fees and they can go and do whatever they want. And unfortunately, I think that's kind of influenced this culture of poor quality. There's no standards to hold anybody to any quality whatsoever. And so we do end up with a lot of shows that are not well thought out, equipment that, falls apart. I mean, I've been at a show where I remember this guy made this special Atlas stone, right? The first load it disintegrated.
Oh my
God. I mean, it turned out he made it out of like plaster or mortar or something. I don't know. It was so wrong. But you just keep seeing that. And yeah, my desire for, at least from the amateur perspective, would be to for the entire sport, but it's got to be top to bottom or bottom to top, some standards in place, because that improves the the experience of the athletes, right? It improves the experience of the viewer,
Spectators.
the spectators,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
it just
no.
goes, it goes throughout the sport. So yeah.
Where I think the issue lies is there's so many people, and this can be applied to athletes trying different techniques and stuff, but so many people are trying to reinvent the wheel, or they're trying to come up with this new crazy idea. Oh, I'm going to change the sport, or I'm going to be the first person to do something amazing. You know what I'm saying? And they don't even have the basics down.
Yep.
They haven't successfully ran a competition with just an overhead, a deadlift, a carry. And you know what I'm saying? They haven't done these things perfectly. And if you want to backtrack, if somebody wants to go pull up my old competitions and stuff, and you'll see I kept everything very simple. I threw in some yoke, sandbag medleys, and I got really good at that. And next competition, I was like, all right, I'm going to push it a little bit more. And that's what I see the most of is when the failure happens is people, they try to do things a little different, and their execution, their heart's in a good place. But the execution, sure's very loosely as well. Some people are there for the money grab as well, but people just aren't good at the basics. And this can be applied to training as well. Where all three of us work out, and how many times do you see somebody come in the gym, a newbie, and they try to do something totally different than what they've ever seen before, and you're just like,
to circle back what I had said earlier, asking you about your thoughts of the difference between high level, amateur. And when I said basics, that foundation it should be just some kind of press, like a axle log dumbbell, a deadlift, a yoke, a farmer's, an Atlas zone.
Sure.
And it goes for promoters too. Like you said, keep it simple, right? Until you build the experience and the know-how to manage more complex events, because scoring is a big problem in amateur. A lot of people, unfortunately, that are putting on shows don't quite have the skill set to use a spreadsheet to its fullest potential. And when you have a complex event with measurements and split times and all this stuff, it adds to the length of the show. It
the complexity
increases the risk of mistakes and so on and so forth. So I agree with that 100%. There is some basics in strongman.
My showdown, my annual competition I have at Battle Axe. We're at the 5th year. I'm actually going to start planning that in the next couple of weeks. I'm really, really excited. But every single year I keep it really simple. 4 events. There's an overhead, there's a deadlift, there's a moving event, and some type of load. Everyone loves it. I have more than 100 people that sign up every single time, and it's smooth. We're not there all day every year, but it moves smoothly. The only time it's ever slow is because there's just a lot of people competing, though. But ideally, there's 3 things I try to focus on whenever I do any competition, and it's this 3-way balance. And I look at things not only as a promoter, I look at things as an athlete, and not only as an athlete, I also look at things as a spectator. And I try to find this trifecta whenever I'm thinking of events, I'm thinking of weights, I'm thinking of any moving pieces. I don't want any of those 3 things to suffer. You understand? I want it to be visually appealing. I want it to where the athletes are looking forward to doing it, and I want to have an event that's easier on me. And if it's easier on me, I can put my attention and my energy towards other things in the competitions. You understand? And so those are the 3 things I think about every single time whenever I'm thinking of events. I'm thinking of just different things, moving pieces. Is how can I focus on all 3 of those? Because a lot of competitions you'll see these events and you're like, okay, this promoter did it because it's easier for him, and it's not good for the athletes and it's not good for the spectators. Okay. Or you'll see something that's like, wow, that's going to be so much fun to watch, but it's an ass whooping for the promoter and it's an ass whooping for the athlete. You understand?
Yeah.
And there's so many times.
And the volunteers, they're the ones that do the most work at the end of the day.
That's a great chance if you don't have a well-organized event, and you have a great chance of not having any of your volunteers showing up again. Right.
Yeah. If they have to carry a 700-pound yoke all the way back to the starting line every time, rather than, because I've seen events like that where it's some kind of medley at the end, and they have to reset the yoke every single time, or farmers. It's a lot of unnecessary work for the volunteers. People are there out of the kindness of their own heart.
And then it affects the spectators, because who wants 5 to 10 minute downtimes in between each run?
Exactly.
A run that lasts 60 seconds for the athletes, but then it's a 5-minute turnaround time. That's not good. So not only are the volunteers suffering, now the spectators are just bored. You know what I mean? I want that action. I want the downtime to be just as long as the actual run lasts. So 60 and 60 is what, whenever I'm doing my planning, I'm doing my itineraries, I always imagine a 60-60. Let's 60 seconds top for the run and then 60 seconds to reset it. Boom,
Sure.
Let's go again. So I always times the amount of competitors times 2. And that's why ideally I want how long I want each event to last.
Yeah.
We're getting into the nitty gritty right now though, but yeah, I get really into promoting. I get really into detail. Yeah. I mean, it's good for other people. I lose my mind sometimes, but I'll get lost in the sauce sometimes.
I mean, but I think you know, to be a promoter, you have to be kind of an architect, right? And you gotta get buried in the details in order to make a good show.
Yeah.
Not only organize a good show, but also execute, like you said earlier. I mean,
yeah,
that's a good trait to have, I think, as a promoter.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I've been doing this for such a long time now. I feel like I'm really getting into my groove, and I'm really able to. I feel very confident in every show that I do now. So I'm very confident that whatever I do, I know it's gonna run smoothly. It's gonna be well executed. If I'm ever gonna try anything crazy, you better believe I've put just hours of thought into it to make sure it's spot on now. But too many times and I'm very passionate, if you can't tell, but I get really upset when I see these promoters. And I know not a lot of people are like me and don't maybe not even have the resources or the time to put this much energy into it. But what really hurts to see is promoters not even, it's like they're not even trying. They created their registration page, they wrote down the events, and they created their way of getting paid, and they just forget about it. And then maybe a month out, they start putting some things together though.
I was going to say, because
I see that all the time.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, you're already talking about the showdowns typically like January, beginning of next year.
Yeah.
You're already planning it. And I do
7
see
months
tons of promoters who they'll put it up and the weights are like to be decided for the longest time. And then like maybe 2 months out, they'll say the weights. And then maybe a month out, they'll start planning everything. And it's like
one thing that really irks me, and whoever's out there, if you're a promoter, you ever plan on being a promoter, and if you're getting custom made equipment, that custom made equipment needs to be ready and made weeks before your competition, not the same week. Because you need to test that equipment. I'm almost certain that if you're getting something custom made, you've never used it before, right? Even if it's something similar, you've never used that exact thing. You don't know the base weight, you don't know anything like that. And so I see all the time in a lot of recent shows I've had the pleasure of witnessing from my own eyes, is I've seen people literally just get delivered the day before, and they're just testing weights while they're warming up, and
I've seen it at high level shows, man. It doesn't just exist at the quote unquote lower level. It exists. I mean, hell, World's Strongest Man apparently didn't even test their truck pull right before the day. It was too light.
Yeah, they've actually been notorious for that. They've done it where there's one year there's like a hill or something, and nobody could budget. I think the furthest they got was like 5 feet. I think it was a year that Pujanowski was doing it, and it's Pujanowski doing an arm over arm pull, and he couldn't even do it. And there were people not even budging it, and they're like, we made a mistake. So,
and those are tough. Of what there's a show last year I went to, and they were pulling a fire truck and everything. The 2 women go, nothing. No one budgets it, nothing. And it's a fire truck. And I was like, the engine's off. And like with airlock brakes for safety, there's no way a truck's ever going to let you have it in neutral.
We're going to talk about something. Everybody, here's another great point. Here's another tip for any promoters out there that want to do truck pulls. So if you get your truck, even if you've tested the weight a week out, if you leave the truck overnight and there's humidity that builds, it locks the brake drums. And so before you actually get started on your event day, you need to take the truck or whatever you're using to drive it. You need to brake and actually wear off the erosion that's built up overnight. I've seen that in competitions before where they're literally locked up because we're just little human beings. You understand what I'm saying? There's not a 18 piston engine driving it to break that stuff loose though. And I've seen that so many times where the first 10 competitors they're the ones that have to break that rust off of the drum to get it even moving.
Yeah.
So that's a really good. I'm glad we're talking about that though. But yeah, and you guys need to take the truck around the block a couple times, okay? Then when you go park it, then you can use it in the competition.
Yeah,
truck pulls are great events, but man, there's just so much variation and so many things that can go wrong. I mean, heat on asphalt. I mean, a heavy truck's going to sink into the asphalt, and I mean, just
it's one of those things.
You should only do if you're very experienced.
We do truck pulls at Showdown, and Thumper out there, he actually takes his truck around Texas, and he has people truck pulling it almost every weekend sometimes.
Nice.
And so that truck he's a pro at it too. Oh my goodness, dude. This man at last Showdown, 126 athletes, ran through all of them in about an hour and a half. Insane.
Wow.
Insane, dude. This guy is just turning and burning. And people are happy they weren't like exhausted or anything like that, man. But yeah, he's a great example, and he drives in the morning of each time. He makes sure he knows everything about it too. He if it's too moist outside, he knows all the variables. He knows how fast somebody's going to do something depending on the weather. With that truck, he knows it so well. So really lucky to have Thumper on my team with these shows.
Yeah, because it makes a huge difference of those little things you don't like notice till it's happening. Of like, oftentimes it is this like. Because like as someone who's volunteered at a good number of shows and everything, I know how things are. Of like my first coach, Ray, used to promote shows here in Texas, and like I just happened to be a somewhat capable person, so like shortly in, I like had to judge things sometimes and had to like, work on scoring and all these things just because like I'm a somewhat capable, organized person. And I think that's the thing is this because there is no like baseline or threshold. A lot of people really aren't thinking of it for repeat customers. Like they're not thinking, will my volunteers want to do this next year? If it's like, because for one, it sucks as a volunteer when you're the one who's getting yelled at for like something not working properly. Like, oh, like this wasn't set up right. Like this wasn't what we were talking about. And you're like, it's a bummer. So I think it's like important to have all those planning things because like a truck pull's great and everything, but it really sucks to like several athletes in to realize that you left it with the engine off, even in neutral, it's not going to go anywhere because it's a fire truck. Like, and those little things of realizing that it's hard when it's not their full-time job, and everything. But you have to think then if it's not your full-time focus, maybe you should have more help or like have a whole team of people.
There's so many resources nowadays too. That's what really bothers me, and that's why I feel like it's like an ego thing. And like I said, I have no issues with other people putting on competitions. I mean, if you're representing this sport, I want you to do a good job. You understand what I'm saying? I genuinely mean that. So if anybody's out there thinking I have some vendetta that you're trying to put on a show, and I want you to ask for help. And I ask for help all the time. And I've had the pleasure of working with Lynn and OSG, and I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of promoters who got me started, like Tommy Sharp, Jacob Fincher, Brittany Barnes. I've had a ton of people. And what I think has made the difference in my promoting is I'm not scared to ask questions. I'm not scared to ask opinions, asking different people what they think about these weights, things like that, though. And I've never once been like, oh my God, I'm scared to ask them this, because I want to make sure that everyone else has a good time. And I can take a step out of my feelings and my ego to make sure I'm doing something right. And a lot of people, I feel like they don't want to do that. So
I can feel that, like that frustration. I mean, even as an athlete, it's hard sometimes to have people that are around you that aren't very experienced, and like you're like, and they go and struggle in competition or events. And it's like, I'm here. Like, just ask some questions. I'd be happy to help you, but you can't, unfortunately you can't control what other people do. And sometimes they have to make their own mistakes. Right. And something that my dad always said, to me growing up was like, I'm going to give you my 2 bits, but you're going to make up your own mind. Right. So you can only help so much, right? You can give your advice, but at the end of the day, the way that we learn is making mistakes, right? And it's actually really commendable that you came on here and admitted that you've made mistakes and everything, because that's valuable. You have to make mistakes, and it's how we grow as people. And I'm always wary of the person that says that I've never screwed up, because then I'm like, well, then you've never learned anything. You're kind of useless to the world.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
No, it's something, I don't know. I've been able to swallow my pride. My training too. I don't think I'd be at this high of a level in my own training if I was scared to ask questions. I was always that little guy in the gym that would come up to the biggest guy in the gym and ask him, like, dude, what are you doing? What are you eating?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this right now? Tell me everything you know. And developing your own opinion and learning from your mistakes is just a part of life. But I feel like when we have the resources and the community that we do have, and you are going out of your way not to ask for help,
yeah,
the athletes suffer, the volunteers suffer. The person that owns the event center or whatever it is that you're holding this competition, they suffer.
Sure.
And so it's more or less not kind of just worry about other people. You know what I mean? If you're worrying about other people, I think you'll have a better time as well. So that's definitely where my feelings are with that. And I can go on and on about that, man. It's
very much like there are so many free things out there, because a lot of times, like Darren and I had an episode a while back about like online coaches and stuff like that. And a lot of times people don't always realize how many just free resources there are out there and everything, of like trying to get your information from everyone. And like these things of like, if you're trying to do an event and you're a first time promoter, you probably shouldn't try to do anything other than just the basics of like sandbags, log.
Yeah.
Maybe like don't decide to do like a custom like Ukrainian deadlift setup that you've never really tested.
I've seen that actually. I've seen that specifically.
Yeah, there's some really good ones.
The 2-story high Ukrainian / whatever.
My favorite is seeing it's advertised as like a deadlift ladder or an overhead ladder, but there's volunteers just loading weight onto the sides of the barbell.
Yeah.
And that's not a real ladder. That's an absolute mess in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. I've always kind of imagined though having a special event. It would have to be on a small like single class show that was moving really fast and have enough bars, I think, to have like 10 competitors going all head to head at one time, and give them 30 minutes to just max out and have to load their own plates.
That sounds like its own type of competition. I definitely would be interested.
But I always kind of wanted to either compete in something like that, or
it's like a deadlift to the death.
Basically.
Write this down. Write these ideas down. Write this down. This is good. Let's run with this.
Someone needs to do it. Just like saves you volunteer time.
But I mean so you kind of talked about earlier, like, everybody's kind of have their own unique things, and where we are now, my idea is always, where do we want to be, and and what's the roadmap to get there. And I think everybody has their own ideas, and I've had my ideas over the years and stuff that I will probably never execute for various reasons, but I've always thought, at higher level shows, what would be very entertaining from a spectator perspective would be great for the athletes, and again, your trifecta, easier on promoters, with the exception of maybe capital investment, would to have those single class 10 athlete cap, all 10 competitors competing in the event all together, 10 at a time, head to head, like a race.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. That would be pretty spectacular, to be honest.
But the capital investment and all that equipment, man, is stupid.
Yeah, and I've been I have quite the collection now. I've been doing this, like I said, for almost 7 years now, and I've made sure to do pairs of everything. I have 4s of some things, but I can't even imagine the pockets you would need to do that. And the time it would take to see your money back on all those investments, though.
I mean, the sport would have to make some tremendous advancements, or the goal would have to be to. I think the primary objective would have to be to grow the audience, right? Because that's where the ROI is for the sponsors, and that's where you're going to make your money. So I don't know how you really execute that. It's going to take a lot of time and investment and everything. But yeah, the sport's going to have to really turn around before that can happen. But then it also eliminates some of the events you can do, because 10-lane truck pull is not very feasible.
So I don't know if you've thought about this, but some people that will remain unnamed have tried this.
They know who they are.
They know who they are. It happens actually every year in different various locations, but they do up to 10 or 12 lanes. And what happens is the equipment is just next to nothing, or it's borrowed, or it's mixed matched. And the idea, your idea has been attempted, but the execution is not even close to being good for the athletes, the spectators, and the growth of the sport. And that's where I am when it comes to my promoting, because I feel like with my shows, I cater to different levels of athletes at this point. I do smaller amateur shows. They're all amateur at the end of the day, though, but I do a certain caliber, a middle caliber, and I do a high caliber, and I do these throughout the year, and they're different competitions. And what I'm trying to focus on, no matter what, each time, is making it engaging, wanting other people who are either watching or hearing about these competitions, making them want to do it. You understand what I'm saying? Wanting them to be involved, whether it's joining a local gym that has strongman equipment or competing in it themselves. And that's my biggest focus. And I don't think the sport would even be what it is today without the amateur scene the way it is. You understand? Having the people competing and looking up to everybody knows all the big guys, right? You got your Shaw, you got your Thor, and people think that's what strongman is, but that's the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what really is the meat of this sport, and it's the amateurs. And I think that's the amateurs are what's going to take it to that level, that growth, in my opinion. And a lot of people are just trying to have these bigger shows, and man, I'm just trying not to make people so bad. But they're trying to just make them big without putting the details into it. You understand that it's just an empty carcass, in my opinion. And sometimes it's way too late for people to even realize the shit show they're walking into.
Yeah, I agree. Because, kind of getting back to, we're in this sort of era of quantity over quality. And unfortunately, when you have that many shows going on, what's seen more often than not by the general public are the amateur shows. Mm-hmm. And I think it does have an impact on the how the general public views strongman. If they're seeing something on either once or a couple of times, that becomes their perception of what strongman is. And if it's not a high quality, well-run show, they're going to walk away with this isn't really for me.
And to put that into perspective, the gym I work out at, like Home Barbell Club, we've started to get more strongman stuff. Like the original stuff was mine, but most of the people there, the most notable strongman video that they know is a video of a guy getting strapped into a Hercules hold and it almost decapitating him. That's literally the video they know for strongman. They're like, oh, so you're into strongman? Like, did you see that video of the guy with his arm? And you're like, oh, that's literally your main exposure, is like world's strongest man or a guy.
That's a great thing you bring up. And it's to sum it up, what both of you guys just said is the huge negative connotation this sport does have. And what I tell people is we need to stray away from the backyard wrestling competitions that are popping up everywhere. Yeah. Sometimes they're literally in a dirt field. They're at a lake with a Viking ship. They're made.
That's John's favorite show.
Oh man,
that was a highlight of my year. The Viking ship, though. Anyways, fortunately enough, that promoter has gone into hiding, from what I can tell, though, for to help everybody out, though. But anyways, it's the backyard wrestling competitions, and like you mentioned before, it's the standard, and a lot of people don't know the standard, and a lot of people just know these events made out of 2x4s and something they made out of a bag of Quickcrete and things like that though. And I'm with my competitions, even my lower level, my entry level amateur shows, I really hold everybody to a very high standard. I nobody's even allowed, you have to wear shoes at my competitions, and I know it pisses a lot of people off though, but this little detail I have is creating a visual experience. How many times have you been to competitions and you see these nasty yellow stained socks just on the ground and the bottoms are all black, and I think that's a visual representation of that competition sometimes. You understand what I'm saying? And there's not a lot of sports out there where you can just show up in a gross pair of socks with holes in them and go out there and compete. And I think raising the bar even at the lower level is in my opinion where I think the growth is going to start happening. You understand that standardization and the sternness. I'm very strict on my rules too. There's so many promoters out there that will change rules halfway through a competition, or they'll roll over on the back when there's enough people that just bitch at them about
it. Or they never got their judges together so that all the judges are on the same page. One judge is judging completely different than the other one for the same weight class of the same event. I've seen that so many times.
I've had that happen in my shows before, and I've removed judges. I've removed them. I've taken people out of my shows before because of that, and it's just astonishing. Even after always have a volunteer meeting, a judges meeting, and the rules meeting, right?
Yeah.
And we make sure everybody who's volunteer in my shows now needs to know how strict I am too, though, especially the level I compete at as well. And I've had someone before that just literally wasn't paying attention. And I was like, hey man, I think it's time you go take a lunch break or something. I got this, and I'll sit in for you for a while though. But it's really hard to see.
It kind of gets back to, you're saying that, people don't really know what the standard is. And unfortunately there are no overarching, there's no umbrella standard. It's kind of, up to promoters to set a standard, but also athletes don't know when all they know are these backyard brawls, right? In dirt fields and deteriorating back alley, whatever. They don't know any better. And so, I've always said that the athletes have a lot of power to vote with their entry fees, right? And if you keep paying for that low quality, it's here to stay. And until athletes stop supporting poorly run, poorly advertised, there's a lot of red flags to look for before you ever sign up for a show, right?
Sure.
But until the athletes themselves start voting with their entry fee, it's going to persist, unfortunately.
And
they should be demanding more.
Yeah. Because it's like we've said on the show, like anytime if I'm gonna pay $75 to $150 to do something, there's nothing else in this world that I would be like, if it went poorly, they'd be like, well, it's like that's how it goes and stuff. Like it's kind of like it's one of those things. It's like if I went to the theater and paid for like the premium box seating and everything, and like one of the staff members decided to just start vacuuming in front of the movie and stuff, and they were just like, well, that's how we do things here. You'd be like, no,
at least I got to see a movie.
Like at least they keep the theater
lucky to have anything at all, buddy.
Yeah, you're lucky you're sitting on anything type of attitude. And I see that too many times with promoters as well, and they just think very highly of themselves. And dude, there's been a couple promoters, I'm not going to name anybody, man, I want to so bad, but there's so many promoters I've seen that have literally not finished competitions or planning. I've seen competitors change events on the fly, and athletes just roll over, be okay with it too. And I've been at competitions watching them. I've had athletes come up to me and tell me things that a promoter just did. And I've told them, I'm like, you should go say something. Why are you telling me? Like, I'm not running the show right now. Like you're the one that has a say in this. You understand what I'm saying? And a lot of people don't understand that. And there's a couple promoters. There's one really that irks me. And I don't even understand how he continues to put on shows. I've personally never seen him run a successful show my entire life in his professional career, and somehow he keeps putting them on, and it's mind-boggling to say the least. And I see people show up and do his shows over and over again, even after they've complained about it. You understand? And it just goes into the low standard we have and the people not voting, not sharing their opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think the sport has created this culture, and I think it comes from the top down. Because I have experience directly with, I'm not going to name them. You have a 50% chance of guessing one of the presidents of one of the two organizations. Just not having any tolerance for anybody saying anything that is even remotely negative about a promoter. You're just not allowed to complain. I mean, this culture has been created, throughout the sport, I think, to where people are scared to complain because they're going to get blacklisted. The shows may not be there, whatever the case may be. But going back to what John said, I mean, you're paying good money now. I mean, $100 for a low level, like level 1 show, and you can't even get, dude. I've done shows where I to this day don't know what the score is. I've been to shows where they gave trophies to the wrong person. I mean, it's too much to ask for reverse scoring nowadays. And you're paying a lot of money really at the end of the day to be entertained as an athlete, because you're not winning any money at the amateur level, right? You may have aspirations to, grow your abilities and your experience and everything, but you're paying to be entertained, and you're not getting quality for the money you spend. And you should be complaining and saying, hey, I just gave you $100 and this is the shit that you sold me. Like, this isn't okay.
If you went to a restaurant and you went to get your dinner and it didn't come out the way you wanted, you're probably not going to eat it, are you? You're going to send it back and you're going to ask for something better.
Well, I know some people that will, but
and those are just those people, though. But a lot of the time that when they see this occurring, you're paying for an experience, especially with these amateur level shows. And my shows personally aren't cheap; they're over $100 now. And I think that where I put it into the shows. Anybody who's been to my shows, that they know I do. I either buy brand new equipment, I do high quality t-shirts, the medals, I do awards, I do a bunch of different things. And at the end of the day, I know 99% of these people competing today aren't going to a higher level. They are there for an experience, and I am there to give it to them. And that's really the end of it. That's the gist of it. You understand what I'm saying? That there's very few people like myself. I'm in the less than 1% of athletes that are at the level I am today. And there's a lot of people that don't ever want to be at this level. You understand? They do amateur shows and they're there to have fun. They're there to get an escape from their normal life, their 9 to 5, their whatever they have going on. They're trying to get away, and they're paying for an experience. Not only the $100, the monetary value, it's their time, and that's a whole weekend. Not even the time, the mental capacity they've even been thinking about this show. You know what I'm saying? You've gotten close to a competition, and the last 2 weeks, that's all you can think about, right?
Right.
It's that mental, the energy you're just spinning on it. Anyways, though, but
I would say we need to, especially here in Texas, we need to. It's really hard, because I was coached by the Viking ship guy, so it's like, but also recently I was
the Viking ship guy. I love it.
I was coached by a guy who just makes equipment for competitions and delivers them like a few days beforehand and stuff. Like, people need to stop doing custom equipment that's like
custom
not made by word. Like, it's one of those things that, like, for one, maybe have it either be someone who's been in fabrications forever, or make sure it's a licensed, accredited business, because you also have this weird thing of promoters. I've seen it where promoters are fine paying thousands of dollars for bad equipment. And I'm like, so you're fine. Like, you're not going to complain about that equipment, and the athletes are. And it's like, at some point you have to be like, you can't be spending money on garbage and stuff. Like, it's one of those things that I think a lot of this custom fabrications and like making cool implements and everything, at the end of the day, what a lot of people forget is the star attraction of the show is the athlete. Like, you don't want the athlete consistently being dwarfed by every goofy apparatus you've created.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like I'm not gonna watch some weird like tower of a Ukrainian deadlift,
Dude,
or like a
is-
big barrel thing of kegs loading down, that like a whole thing. You're like, and it happens
Yeah.
routinely in Texas. That like,
Thank you for that, John. Because
Yeah.
I feel the same way. Like, I mean, lately things have been getting so ridiculous. Like, it's cool to have unique events, because that is
Yeah.
sort of what makes strongman really great. But it seems like we've kind of entered this era where, like you said earlier, Derek, everybody's trying to one up the other promoter and come up with the craziest, just weirdest shit. And now you've got like, what video did I see just recently? I think it was in Europe somewhere. They had like a standing incline log press.
oh, the ladder.
Yeah.
And it was the ladder, and the guy like missed, and it like, dude, it fell on him. There was no safeties. It was just, I mean, it was a pointless. Like, I don't even understand like where that came from, or the big like Ukrainian deadlift. I think it was in Australia. Like the competitor was like this little person on this gigantic.
That was, I think, that was last
tower.
year. Australia's Strongest Man. I saw that too, and it looked ridiculous.
It was just like, what was the point? Like, let's tone it down just a little bit. Like, let's be
Get good at the basics.
Yeah, be good at the basics, and have a little ingenuity. Sure, be creative, but like, it doesn't have to be, an actual circus to be entertaining.
Yeah,
it's hard though.
And a lot of these promoters I'm talking about and stuff is I'm not naming anybody, and this isn't, we didn't all come here today to bash anybody. It's more or less just to grow and stuff like that, though. But these people that I see putting on and having these quote unquote crazy and over the top events, is I know for a fact they've never put on a well-run show with the basics. You understand? Right. They have never done just a common strongman show, and it goes smoothly. Nobody gets hurt, and that's it. Good scoring. Like, none of these people have done it. All these crazy, they've just never gotten good at the basics. They think the more elaborate it is, the more money they're going to come in, or the more signups they're going to get. And that's just not the case. And the Battle Axe Showdown is an amazing example. There are 4 events. There's going to be a press, a deadlift, a carry, and a truck pull. That's it. That's what you're going to get every single year. And people know that.
It's easy to train for too, for the athlete. So as an athlete, as a high level competitive athlete for many years, the thing that probably drove me nuts the most is when equipment was an event was impossible to train because the equipment was so unique. And then on top of it, to make matters worse, invariably the hometown guys got to train on it. While those of us that lived on the other side of the country didn't have any way to train on it. There was no access. And it doesn't make sense, but from any perspective, it's got to be accessible by the athlete. Well, it should either be accessible by all athletes or not to any, right? If you're going to go unique, you shouldn't be giving anybody the home field advantage to train on that specific piece of equipment while no one else gets an opportunity. That's just like, that rubs me the wrong way.
What and more theorization, but Tommy Lavelle, we've always talked about events and stuff like that, and he's a very outside of the box thinker, and I love Tommy, very unique guy, and what he wants to do in a competition, he wants to do, because weights sometimes, this is what you're just talking about, weights are always just kind of subjective at the end of the day. Like, for instance, I'm at Worlds last year, the Viking press. Everybody training for it knows the setup. It's a neutral grip. It's a fixed hinge. But nobody kind of knew what the actual in-hand weight truly is going to be. True. I didn't. That shit was way heavier than I was expecting. I got rocked. But anyways, and so Tommy has the idea, and he's done this with a couple of his Brooklyn Strongest competitions, is where he doesn't even tell you the weight because he knows it's subjective. And then he's like, let's do a mystery event. And when you're going into this style of competition, knowing that it is subjective and there aren't weights, this is good. But when you're going into a competition that they say, these are the weights, this is how things are going to go, and you show up, and it's basically like everything was a mystery. And that's not what should be happening. And Tommy's a guy you guys definitely should get on a chat with. He's definitely
I've talked to Tommy a few times over the years. I mean, in person. Yeah, great guy.
I love the way he thinks, man. But the way he thinks is what a lot of promoters do by just not doing what they're supposed to do. And you know what I'm saying? They're creating this, and it's not well executed. And I see it way too many times, man. And I think people just need to get good at the basics. I just can't say that enough. I can't.
There is an audience for it. Like because people will be like, but Rogue Invitational, they had like those big apparatuses and everything. Yeah. As someone who is there are more people interested in watching people sprint back and forth on turf and do kipping pull-ups than that. And it's like, so there is a market. Like people want to see athletes do stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's because as a lay person, as a lack of better words to put them, somebody that's not an actual athlete, it's easier for them to make a connection to the challenge, to the difficulty, to what they're actually doing. Whereas when you get these crazy events, there's nothing to compare it to. So, how do spectators actually understand what the challenge and the difficulty is when they have nothing to compare it to? They can't, comprehend the value of what's happening. And I think that's the same with and I mean, at the risk of saying but not saying, I think there needs to be a little bit of standardization with like logs and axles and dumbbells and stuff.
Goodness, yes, I've had that conversation
to some extent.
Times.
What is the difference? Does the average viewer really truly comprehend the significance between like a 10-foot 10-inch log versus a 5-inch 13-inch log?
Sure.
Right?
Sure. And these visually,
they're different lifts, really, at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And to go back to what John was saying, and like you see the people doing CrossFit and stuff, and this is where I push. I'm really big on the amateur scene, and I think the amateur scene needs a lot more attention than what you just see these YouTube channels and you see all of these big times. Is there's people that watch CrossFit, like powerlifting and CrossFit. They're way bigger sports than strongman. Even with CrossFit declining over the past couple of years, what makes them, I think, more popular, in my opinion, is because people can relate more to a 5'6", 5'8" man doing pull-ups and doing these easily attainable things than a 7-foot monster pulling 1,000 pounds.
Agreed.
And so what I think needs to happen to get more people into the sport and to grow it is getting people to understand that you can do this. This is easily attainable. There are smooth running competitions that aren't incredibly elaborate with these customized rigs and attachments and things like this. And I think that's the big push. And that's what I'm personally trying to do, is trying to get people just to be able to relate more to it, understanding that everyone can do this. And to go back to what you were saying, you think there should be less shows. And I actually personally agree or disagree.
I mean, I would like to just be more shows, but quality shows.
Not only, so yes, quality, of course. So not only, I have this opinion because not only am I a strongman promoter, I'm a powerlifting promoter. I've just been doing this the past year. And there are powerlifting meets every weekend, multiple powerlifting meets every single weekend. And I know people in powerlifting that compete like every 2 months. Why isn't that happening in the sport? You know what I'm saying? Nobody's saying there's too many powerlifting meets. You guys probably don't know, but it's just not happening. Mm-hmm. Arguably enough, the reason I became a powerlifting promoter is because there's actually a void here in DFW. There's not enough powerlifting meets happening. And whenever I've hosted these competitions, these powerlifting meets, the demographic isn't these giant monsters. They're between like 5'2" and 5'8", and I rarely see anybody over 200 pounds. But they're engaged. They're growing the sport. They're buying from their sponsors, and that's what helps grow sport. They're getting the SBD singlets. They're getting the ins or knee sleeves. They're getting the latest shoes and stuff like that. And that's what helps grow the sport. At the end of the day, it's using your dollar to vote almost. You know what I'm saying? Yep. And I think that's the direction the sport can go, but it's going to take standardization. Like you're saying, logs. We need to have a standard log that is across the board, or an axle. Is it 2 inches or is it 2.5 inches? Is this competition going to have this one, or is this competition going to have this one? But with powerlifting, I believe what has helped that sport grow is they have rules out of the wazoo. It's regulation on top of regulation, and you don't see people picketing or joining CrossFit because they don't like powerlifting. You understand what I'm saying? They want to get strong, but they respect the rules. They respect the level at which those rules are enforced at.
Yeah.
And that goes along with promoting and stuff. There's how many shows have you been to where promoters just change things? They
Every
change
single one.
Exactly. And it just
from the bottom to the very tippy top, man.
It just needs to stop. It needs to stop. It needs to be enforced. If you're going to do something a certain way, it needs to be done the entire time. And it doesn't need to be at the cost of the first 10 competitors before you figure out something's wrong. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing I have the benefit of being the quality promoters I am, because I do own a gym and I'm able to test equipment. Dude, I got an endless supply of freaking lab rats at my gym at any given moment. Yeah. I'll come up to them and I don't care if they're 5'2" and 120-pound woman or 6'6", 330-pound man. I'm like, hey, you're a great example. You're a great example. Let's try some stuff out. And that's what I do when I'm leading up to my shows is I'm able to test so many things out there. And I know there's promoters that aren't though, but to go back to what we're saying is ask questions, reach out to people that do have access to these answers, reach out to people that have done these things before that you've never done before. You understand? Like it's like, if you've never changed a tire before, you're going to probably get on YouTube and figure out how to do it, right? There's resources out there. There's plenty of people that have already done what you've done or tried to do what you're trying to do. And not going out of your way to figure these things out or even just ask, you're just hurting the sport and you're hurting the athletes that are involved.
And I think that's a great thing of like mentioning powerlifting. The nice thing is that the barrier of entry is so low for powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah.
You see at Austin Fit Fest, they both had audiences that were bigger than the strongman one.
Yep.
And a part of it is because you can go into any gym and you can get a barbell and start doing things.
Yep.
And a lot of times too, I mean, you think for athletes, how many athletes are going to buy stuff from the sponsors when they had to buy a several $100 implement to try to train for this weird custom event that you're already spending a ton of money on? It's like, no, like maybe you're not going to have money after spending.
The worst is when you buy that $1,000 piece of equipment and then never see it in another competition ever again.
God, dude, I literally bought $3,000 worth of circus dumbbells after OSG last year, and it's not even at Worlds again.
Dude, I spent so much money on equipment because I competed for 14 and a half years, dude. The stupidity of buying specialized equipment and then just seeing it collect dust for like the next 10 years is just.
I love it.
Oh,
I love it, man. But again, I am in a really special position. I do understand that I'm able to put on these shows because I do have a lot of resources, and I'm able to spend a lot of money on equipment and not let it collect dust. I can put it in my gym, and I have people to train with, and when I promote these shows, I have a lot of different directions. I'm also growing. I'm growing my gym, and if my gym grows, my competitions grow. My competitions grow, my gym grows, and then my personal coaching grows. And it's just so many different angles. There's just so many ways of just growing this sport. And I feel like I'm trying to attack it from a lot of different directions. And I'm lucky to. I've come into a lot of really great opportunities. And I know I've been bashing a lot of people on this this call. I mean, not personally. I haven't named anybody. But I've been talking ill will, and I do have my opinions about some people. But I do understand I am in an inclined position. I've stumbled across opportunities that some people haven't. But I am saying this on the record. I'm willing to help. And a lot of people don't ask me for help. And it's really upsetting. And it's not like I want to hold this over them. And it's not like I'm going to go announce to the world that, oh no, they asked for some help. It's I want to help. I want to be involved, and I want the athletes to do it. I want these competitions to grow. I want the sport to grow. I want to sit back and be a millionaire one day. I can't do that if there's backyard shows happening every other weekend, you know? So
yeah, which is understandable. And I think a part of it is a part of things do become a cash grab if you're not relying on the future and everything. It's this idea of, I think what most people like you do it, and like our friend Frank, who helps out behind the scenes with this show, everything he makes off a competition, he puts towards the next one for the most part.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things that like
investing. Yeah.
you're investing, because it's one of those things of like, it's not a strongman competition shouldn't be a get rich scheme. In
Mhm.
fact, like if you're doing it that way, that's not sustainable. And I think it's this issue of trying to do too many people do one and done shows, or they do things too over the top. Because at the end of the day, also what blows my mind is anytime you're paying for all this custom equipment, if you spend more on custom equipment than like the cash prizes and taking care of the athletes, that's a
Yeah.
concern of like,
Yeah,
it's one of these
absolutely.
issues of like, I think at the end of the day, people need to put the athletes first. And like, I would say we need to have high quality shows and ask people for help, because I think there is this thing of like, you're with Strongman Corp and like USS, people are like, well, you can't, like, there's some weird thing there. And it's like, no, we just need good shows overall in this
Yeah, I
state.
don't care
Like,
what federation it
yeah.
is. I really don't care.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah, and the go with like it'd be great if all shows did cash payouts and stuff. And like I mentioned before, I've made a ton of mistakes before, and I stopped doing cash prizes in my amateur shows because at the end of the day, you got to understand there's 90. If I get 130 people signed up at a competition, 99%, over 99% of those people aren't going to get any of that cash, and they know that. They know that. But they're going for the experience, and I put my money towards that experience. I put it into a good time for everybody, and anybody who's volunteered at any of my shows in the past couple of years, I cater, I bring food for my volunteers, I do a lot of things. I go out of my way to make sure that they're being helped, because if they're in a good mood, the show's going to run a lot smoother too. So
yeah, and I think
So I
that makes a
started.
difference.
Go ahead, John.
No, Darren, you go.
I was gonna say, so I started doing Highland Games, and I've only have like 3 shows under my belt so far. And I think this is a good example of standardization and how much it helps promoters and be able to raise money and spend it in positive ways that help the athletes, or at least, give them value for their entry fees. These shows are $40 to $50 still per entry fee. And they feed us. They feed all of the athletes at every show.
yeah. No, I've seen that. So I've had the opportunity. I just started working with this man named Christian. He just did the Highland Games at the USA Fit Games. He's actually going to be doing the Highland Games at North Texas Strength Expo in August, the one I'm hosting.
Nice.
And I'm incredibly excited to work with this guy. He's got the attitude I had when I first started. He just wants to promote. He's not looking to make $1 million, but he's looking to invest. He's looking to, every single show he's going to buy a little bit here, buy a little bit there, and use that money towards having a better show every single time, man. And the few conversations we've had together about his philosophies and the direction he goes to take it, I absolutely love to see it. And anytime I see a strength sport and a promoter involved trying to grow, it just makes my heart so happy, dude. And yeah, I loved being there. I walked around and went behind the scenes. He talked to me about some of the stuff he was doing, and everybody there just like they're just hanging out and having a good time. It was really cool atmosphere. It was really nice.
Highland Games are fun. They're fun, but I guess kind of getting back to the promoter thing though, the standardization is they buy all the equipment and that's done, right?
Yeah.
They're not expending a lot of money for new equipment, crazy events every show. It allows the promoter to have additional disposable funds to take care of the athletes. And I think, Strongman has been so caught up in that, let's spend as much money as possible and on all the crazy shit that like promoters don't have anything to take care of the athletes. And it would be so beneficial. Because like you said, I mean, most of these people may not win any money at the end of the day because it's only going to go to the top 3, which is great. But at least there's a carrot on the stick. But also, I mean, they're putting a lot of time into training for your show. They're, the stress and everything that goes into it. Just a lot of them are traveling, right? Taking days off of work to come. And it would be nice to get to a place in the sport where every show isn't new equipment, and it allows promoters to put more money to athletes, even at the amateur level, because it would be I don't know. I just think that athletes do give so very much at the end of the day, and there's so very little that's given back. And I mean, that's kind of across the board. Of course, there's great promoters that do give back. I'm not trying to generalize.
Sure.
But athletes at the end of the day they're the they're the business model, right? And amateur shows, they're the revenue at this point in time. They're the income. They're the ones that support the sponsors. They're the ones that really support the sport financially. And it would be nice to get to a point where, you know, there's more payback for athletes, even if it is just like, here's a sandwich and chips halfway through the show, right?
I have an open invitation for you guys too, and anybody that wants to come out. Anybody who's watching this, you want to message me, I'll give you all access pass. Come to the show, North Texas Strength Expo, and I want to show everybody what I'm going to be doing for these athletes. All right, we're going to be doing a lot of great things. I got a lot of great sponsors. I haven't made a lot of announcements actually, but everything you just said, it's going to be really great. It's going to be very inclusive. I'm definitely going to be treating these athletes like they're the talent, you understand? And I'm really excited. I want to invite everybody out. I want everyone to experience that. Even promoters out there, and maybe I'm talking about you, and maybe you plan on still putting on a show one day. And I just encourage everybody to come out and go check that show out and see how the athletes are doing. And the warm-up area, man, dude, how many warm-ups area have you seen where it's just there's like 2 barbells and 2 pairs of 45s laying around, and that's all they get though.
I walked into a 600-pound squat one time 8 minutes after doing a medley that fucking exhausted me to the max without a single warm-up rep. So that's my experience with warm-up.
Love that so much, man. Adequate, man. I could go on too about just adequate warm-up equipment and stuff like that. And that goes into event planning. A lot of people don't think about that stuff. And like I said, I've made the mistakes before in my shows, and I've not planned the warm-up area into direct correlation of the events and the amount of competitors you have and the style of the event that's going to be taking place. These things are really, really important. And I've made that mistake before, and I see it way too often still, where there's a max circus dumbbell at a competition, and there's 2 circus dumbbells, 80 athletes, and the starting weight's like 100 pounds. And half the women can't even touch that. You understand what I'm saying? So it's just this comes into event planning. Yeah, we can come up with some cool events, or I can spend a lot of great money on a squat for reps. Is there a squat rack in the back? What are they warming up with? You know what I mean? Like, these are things that a lot of people don't think about. And yeah, sure, you could have people warm up on the actual events, and I've seen this at a lot of national competitions too, though. But when you've got 100, 200, 300 athletes, you can't expect every single one of them to have quality warm-ups before they actually go out there and put their body on the line. So it's things that people just really don't consider.
Yeah. And it's hard because I think people, a lot of times, it's very much an aspirational thing. People have this idea of this like perfect thing, but you think about, like, there are tons of events like I've seen where you have something like Atlas Stone over bar, and there's nothing that replicates that as the warm-ups, not even sandbags. Yeah. And you're like, I guess I'll just like kind of maybe work on some Zerchers. Zerchers are great and all, but like it would be nice to have something more similar of like.
I'm kind of the mind though too. There's a point, like if a show's running quickly enough, you're warm by the time you get Atlas.
I was just about to say that because that's what I do with Showdown.
Yeah. So you're warm enough. And I mean, I don't think I've ever really warmed up for Atlas Stones, maybe a couple of times, but the last class qualifier I did here in Denver we went straight into a 380-pound Atlas Stone for reps, 0 warm up on the stone, but we were moving so quickly. Like everything was warm, and it felt like a balloon. So there is that consideration too. But
I think it's a chicken egg situation.
I think as you get started, though, I mean, warm up is incredibly important, and I can't tell you how many shows that I think it was 2017 USS Nationals in Detroit. I remember this group of ladies. Like they brought like their own axle, their own rack, their own plates, and like all this stuff to warm up on because there was nothing to warm up on. And they knew better, right?
They still showed up though and gave their money to them. I love that.
Yeah.
Bring
That's
your own
what makes
equipment.
me mad though.
But the burden that promoter put on those athletes is just like mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I see that way too often. But Showdown, for instance, with like we do sometimes I'll run events. So we had a press and we had the deadlift ladder. And then as soon as an entire weight class finished the deadlift ladder as a whole, I sent them outside to start the truck pull immediately. And they would just go right into it. There was some downtime, maybe 10, 15 minutes in between where they got a chance to chill, of course, before they went, but they just immediately went to it. I had zero complaints. I actually had so many people telling me how they loved the flow of everything and how it was very consistent. And these are things you got to take in consideration. So if you know that you're going to be able to use one event so that's an athlete's warm up and you can go into the next one, you have to make sure there isn't a ton of downtime though. You can't have an hour in between. If you're going to have an hour in between, you need to have a warm up area. So if this were to happen at my show and I didn't have that back to back, I would need a rope and a sled for people to warm up on, or something along the lines for them to get the feel all over again. You understand?
Yeah.
And people these are just things that people don't consider, and it affects the athletes and nobody else.
Because I've been to shows that like there is an hour break between almost everything, so that's why the warm up becomes this weird thing where you're like, because you do get cold, or it'll just be like, let's take an hour and a half for lunch. It's like, for one, that kind of sucks. Like I'd much rather hop in slightly earlier than like this super big gap or whatever. But I think
so like worlds, it's hours in between events, which is amazing at that caliber. When you're lifting that type of weight and you're with that many athletes, but Lynn's always makes sure there is more than enough warm-up equipment. I've never once I've heard anybody ever say there's not enough warm-up anything. And that's what's great. But like Showdown, for instance, that is a fast-paced show, and there's different caliber shows. Clash, for instance, very fast-paced, and if you're ready for it, but that's what people are expecting. You know what to expect. You understand. But if you're expecting a fast-paced show and it's not fast-paced, that's going to kick you right in the teeth. And vice versa too. If you're expecting a lot of downtime and you don't get that downtime, that's a kick in the teeth. So it's definitely getting people anticipating these things. And I try to do itineraries too for Showdown and stuff, because I try to get those so dialed in though. And I understand itineraries, they're not feasible for everybody, maybe, because it may be the event you're hosting, you're not too familiar, or the location, you're not too familiar with it, or there's other variables that come into play though. But there's definitely a lot of attention and a lot of effort that can be made to help negate these shortcomings.
Yeah, agreed.
It is, because there are, I think, people stepping up and everything. Like you stepped up, and then like the Kaos Classic, that's going to be excellent.
Oh my goodness,
like
dude, so
setting the standard, because you do want to have these ways of like people see like normal achievable people. This is a slight side tangent relating to what we were saying about like people who are regular size. I just sent to one of the group chats I'm in, sent a montage of Emmanuel Pescari winning Austria's Strongest Man again. He's like 5'7", and everyone they were like, why doesn't everyone know about this guy? He's insanely strong. I was like, yeah, he's like holds records. He's normal size. Like,
well, we had him on here, remember? And I mean,
we did.
Like,
and I was like,
World's Strongest Man wouldn't bring him, even though he technically qualified. Wouldn't let him compete because they didn't want the smaller athlete. They want big guys only.
The direction this sport is going, and this is something we talked about earlier, it's kind of the growth of the sport, and it's not the static lifters. It's not the biggest, the baddest guy. It's athletes, and Novikov is a great example of this. Pablo just came into the scene on the higher end, and we can talk people at the lower end. I mean, me, for instance, I'm not nowhere near the most static guy on the field, but I've held my own against some really top dudes because I make up the difference in my speed, my athleticism. I can move. And I believe that's the direction the sport is taking, not only in the subweight classes, but also the open. And the couple last World's Strongest Men are great examples of the caliber of athlete and the direction things are going. And I love seeing it. I love seeing the athleticism, and strongman definitely needs to be a more athletic sport. So heavy. Let's keep it heavy though, but I want things more fast paced, more moving. Just I want to see the athlete. I want to see the athlete in everybody.
Yeah, agreed. Because you want everyone to be really putting in that work and stuff. Because I think that's the hard thing of like a lot of promoters are complacent, but then it's easy as like athletes to also get kind of complacent, and it's like trying to push that bar forward to realize that like vote with your dollar and stuff. Like don't pay for shows that like aren't gonna do anything. And if it is a bad enough show, like make a deal of it. I know there's no refunds in strongman because like is strongman. So like you pay for what you get and
So I
stuff.
think it's,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think that's kind of bullshit too. I mean,
Which
there's
also
a point.
sucks.
There's
Yeah.
a point, obviously, when the promoter has spent your money, but like I had an experience once where I paid, and then 3 days later, unexpectedly, I got an international invite that was at the same time period, and I asked the promoter, it was nationals, for a refund. It was the same organization that I got the invite through to help me make it, and they were just like, no refunds. And I'm like, you got to be shitting me, man! Like, you couldn't have spent my money in 3 days, 3 months or 2 or 3 months out of the show. Like, you
The one thing I do disagree though, but what I do with my shows, if I don't do refunds, but I do allow athletes to use their registration towards future shows of mine.
Yeah, I just lost. It was lost completely. So I mean, there's at least there's a little bit of that, but
I think
I'm bitter because it was the same. It was
the same bodying function.
It was the same bodying function that gave me an invite, but then gave me a little finger and like, well, you're on your own. Like,
that's
we
a little different.
That we gave you the invite at the same time as the show that you signed up for.
Yeah.
But we're not going to help you out.
Yeah, if you paid for my show and then you also qualified for another one of my shows, I absolutely would transfer it over or somehow, that doesn't make, that's different though. But I don't do refunds, but I do allow athletes to use their registration for my future shows. So their money is more or less an investment.
Yeah.
And also doing taxes is a bitch when you see that money going in and out, and I have to tell my CPA, oh no, that wasn't an expense, that was anyways. But wait, that's a whole nother podcast for a day.
Taxes are awful.
You should be writing all of this off, is what you should be doing.
Oh, I do. I have a whole bank account for this. This stuff is. These are just expenses.
I don't think a lot of athletes realize this either or are aware of it. As an athlete, the IRS will allow you to write off all of your competition expenses as long as you're competing for money for up to 3 years. If you don't make a positive revenue from it in 3 years, they'll kind of put a kibosh on it, but you might get audited and fine. But for 3 years, you're allowed to write off all of your competition expenses as an athlete, as a for-profit business.
Striving professional.
Yeah.
Yep.
Basically, talk to your accountant about it because it's pretty awesome. It's a good deal.
I am my accountant. I do write off with my coaching and stuff. That is an expense. I write that off and what I pay for and all those stuff though. Because anyways, that's a whole nother conversation.
That's true, but I think it takes a lot of thought. Like the whole kind of underpinning of this is like this takes thought. Like running a big event, like
doing anything well
takes
thought.
It.
Let's clear that up. Doing anything well successfully takes thought. And a lot of the things that we've been bashing on aren't done well. So that a lot of things there's room for improvement. I think I'm a nice guy. People are watching this and probably think I'm just a hater though, man. But I'm very passionate. I'm a gym owner. I'm a coach. I'm an athlete and a promoter, and so I'm deeply involved in the sport. More than I would say a lot of people are. And so I got a lot invested, my money, my time, my whole life revolves around this sport. And so whenever I see people putting on these shows and these national level competitions, and they're just fucking thrown together, it looks like my second uncle could have done a better job of coming up with the equipment and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Just some fucking guy off the streets, but it's very upsetting. It really it hurts me a lot, man. Shelly knows better than anybody how much I can vent sometimes about some of the stuff I see on the internet and I keep to myself, and it just hurts. I take it personally, and I know I shouldn't sometimes, but
when you care, you do, right? And I've always said that too. And like I say inflammatory shit all the time because I have many years of just like of caring so much and seeing so much shit that it's like, people may not understand the reason that, John and I, started this, this podcast that really focused on standards. And we're talking about this stuff because it's not to, like you said earlier, it's not just to bash, it's because we care and we want to see the sport improve. Right.
Yeah,
and,
no, absolutely.
And we can't improve if we keep like skirting around these hard truths or these hard conversations it has to be talked about. And, you know, it's going to make some people uncomfortable, but I'm a firm believer that in order to grow, you have to be uncomfortable. Because, I mean, you're uncomfortable and you're lifting weights. You want to get stronger. You got to get uncomfortable. You want to grow as a sport, as an athlete, you got to be uncomfortable. So I think it's really important that we have these conversations, you know, and it's going to hurt some feelings along the way, but
criticism's how you grow.
That was a great monologue.
I've had coaches who like didn't need videos or like didn't care what angle it was from and everything. Eric Carlson, one of the best coach I've ever had, which, to be fair, I have a weird track record with coaches, but he actually was great. And he'd be like, no, you need to film your deadlifts from the side. You need to film from this angle. So, like, I need to see what needs work and everything.
Yeah.
Like, you need to give me something to work with. And it was uncomfortable because, like, it's not the best angle and stuff to, like, show those things. But you're never going to grow if you're not down for some criticism.
Yeah,
so
dude.
I just like walk in to like.
Yeah, any athlete I've ever worked with that it's a red flag when they're weird about stuff like that, though. And you got to be very transparent when it comes to coaching. And this can be taken into anything, though. But having these tough conversations and stuff, and having people's reactions, because I've been pretty outspoken for the most part. Maybe not as much as you, Darren, but I've been pretty outspoken about things I dislike about this sport, and I've had people lash out at me, and it's not because I'm like I have a personal vendetta against these people. It's just, why should I like have any more patience for it, or why should I tiptoe around your feelings when you're clearly doing something that's affecting all of us in this sport that we're all involved in?
Yeah.
That's where I definitely I had a person that will remain unnamed. He was putting on a competition. It wasn't doing well. He wasn't getting the registrants he was expecting. So he ran a sale and discounted his registration. And I went on this made a little story, didn't even tag him or anything. And it got up to him because he knew it was about him. But I was basically just being like, okay, so you had a certain price, you discounted it because you weren't getting the money you wanted to, or the signups. So what are you going to do about all the other people who trusted you and paid full price? The other 20 people who paid the full price, are you going to give them their money back? Like, but registration doesn't work like that. Just because it's not going the way you want to doesn't mean you can cut these corners. And it was a whole thing, but anyways.
And it's a hard conversation because people of like Texas is kind of oversaturated, and it's one of those things to realize that it's good that people are saving their money towards better shows and everything, because you can't.
That's what the story was. The story was me actually talking to athletes, telling them like, why are you putting your money towards this when it's clear as day? Like, it's just a cash grab. I've had plenty of shows that weren't successful. I've had plenty of shows that I barely had 40 people sign up, and I made sure I still put everything into it, and it was a good time, and the people that showed up had a good experience, and it didn't take away anything from them just because there wasn't 100 people loaded. That's what the story was. It was me basically questioning. There's people still signing up. Like, it's a huge red flag that this person is now discounting these entry fees. It doesn't make sense to have. If it's going to be discounted, it needs to be an early bird, not a back end. Oh no,
a late discount.
Please sign up to my competition because I really need this money. That's a huge red flag to me.
But it is like a tough thing, and people don't always want to put in the work that it takes, because a part of it is like to put on a really good show. You have to have worked towards it. Like, you don't just walk into Clash. You don't walk into Chaos. You don't walk into Nationals. You had to do a lot to get to that point. I think there's this idea that sometimes people, because you see it like internationally and other things now, people will just be like, this is like the world's biggest show, or this is the premiere, like this is the biggest show in the game. And I'm like, where did you come from? Like, what are your credentials to run a show? Like, have you run a world's level thing, or are you just calling it like Texas's premier best thing ever? And you're like, we kind of need to see how the receipts of how that happened. Like, just because
Luke Davies went on a rant about that too recently. About
He
Learn
does
how to-
watch till the
Learn how to
end.
spell
We're
your
gonna
name.
we're gonna
correctly.
get that right one of these days, 100% of the time.
I've just been saying it that way for years now.
Same.
It's deprogramming.
Yikes. But anyways, he went on a whole tangent about that. This guy, this random promoter just started calling him, it was the strongest something. It was over there in Europe, I think, though, but it was just completely ridiculous. And just them being like, okay, well, this is the premier competition just because I said so. And that's just not how it works either, man.
Yeah.
You gotta, there's steps to these things. There's hands you need to shake, and there's people you need to talk to before you think you can be at this level. And like, for instance, I'm doing the Southwest Regionals, and I've had the absolute pleasure and the opportunity to be able to work with Lynn, and just the time I've been able to spend with him and talk to him and bounce ideas off of. I believe that's taken my promoting to the very next level, and having just being able to just share the OSG name has just been an absolute honor, though.
Yeah.
But
That's huge.
Exactly. But I'm not going to put on this competition after I've never had a conversation with him. You understand? Like, I can't be like, oh yeah, this is the OSG Southwest unofficial qualifier. You know what I'm saying? I can't just walk around there swinging around like that. But it's just not how it works.
Also, shout out to our athlete Chase, who went up there to test out.
Yeah. Chase came by today, dude. I love that guy, man.
Chase is an absolute beast for like his size and everything. Because it's weird because he's shorter than I am.
Don't discriminate against size.
Oh no, I mean because I'm short too.
Chase, I never noticed. I never noticed you were short, Chase.
I'm sorry.
You just look like a normal sized person to me.
I'm just saying that he is dense. He is dense like Emmanuel. Like, density is not a bad thing. These guys need to embrace the density.
He's got a great mustache too.
Oh yeah, he has great aesthetic, and I think that's that important thing of like making sure things go smoothly. Of like part of it, what you do for your gym is you don't allow walk-ins and stuff. So it's like curating an environment, and I think a lot of these shows have become essentially like gyms that just allow anyone to walk in. Like novices maybe shouldn't be having invites to nationals. You shouldn't you might need a bigger class to you might need a bigger class. You shouldn't be able to go to nationals because there's 3 of you and you both.
Do you want to talk about how there's novice classes at nationals in one federation? Do you guys know?
Say that again.
Did you guys see the weight classes for the most not to be named? Are you pulling up your computer right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, there's like 20 or 30 different weight classes, and you're going to tell me that's not a cash grab?
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, when you have 500 plus people at your nationals and you're inviting novices, that's exactly what it is. That's what kind of goes back to saying that the business model of strongman, amateur strongman in the U.S. is all built around revenue off of the athlete.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be. So there is opportunities to make money, and I hope every promoter does make a living off of this. I have yet to do that. But at this level, when you're putting on a competition of that level, there's no need for that. That takes away from the people that are at that high level when you're allowing anybody to walk in and do it. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely, it does. Because it dilutes the significance for the people that actually work to get there, the people who stand a chance to win and go on to bigger and greater things. And then from a sponsorship perspective, I've bitched about this endlessly, that as an individual athlete with sponsorship, you get out on the floor that is just a massive mess of 500 athletes. You are nobody. Yeah. Your sponsors get absolutely zero exposure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Means nothing.
And means absolutely nothing.
You're just cattle. You're just cattle, man. That's it. That's all they care about, man. They care about getting you in, getting you through the events, and getting you out. Yep. They don't care about your experience, and it's very upsetting. Like OSG and stuff, there's 11 weight classes, and Lynn, for instance, as we've discussed, the potential of having more weight classes, but there would have to be a huge demand at that level for new weight classes to come on board.
Yeah, and you need to be selective with these things and stuff.
At that level, I would understand novice shows. I've put on shows that were strictly novice. I put on shows that are strictly high level amateurs. But to have the interminglings, it's just clear as day that your intentions aren't the athletes. It's not your quality control guy just took a vacation.
Yeah.
It's just clear as day, and that not only that competition, but the year before, the qualifiers for that and stuff like that, and this goes on to just, I know other people feel this way. It's not just us three, and if other people feel this way, they need to vote. They need to be more outspoken. They need to know who is in charge, who's supporting them, who's benefiting from them, and not supporting these people. And that's just.
And it's tough because people do want that, like they do want the prestige of nationals and everything. But
that's the other things too. I know plenty of people that do these nationals just because they want the clout.
Yeah.
Or they'll put in their bio that they're nationally qualified, and it's just
drives me nuts, man.
It's like people calling themselves world's strongest man, and it's like you did OSG. There's no asterisks about that, like.
I mean, we can go on and on too. I'm not a big fan of these shows that have just started popping up either, and just inviting anybody and calling them a pro. Also, now it's a pro class, and everybody that competes is now just a pro, and it's like, I mean, there's a like I don't like the Strongman Corp definition of pro either, because I don't think a card makes you a pro. And I've always kind of wrestled with the idea of like, how is one nationals more prestigious than the other nationals when they're the same athletes and of basically the same. There's actually more athletes at USS to be granted, like 80% of them don't belong there, but
I thought we weren't going to name anybody.
I know.
Hey, I don't care about the organizations. They're at the top, and like there's a lot of accountability and responsibility to bear there, in my opinion.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's to me though, like how can one organization monopolize like the pro, but the other one doesn't, and even then.
Whoa, you're not talking about the Pro International title?
No, I'm talking about the Pro card.
No, and I'm talking about USS's.
But I am kind of also talking about that, because now they have like the qualifier shows. That's like the pro qualifier, but then promoters that are putting on those are calling all of the people that are there to qualify pros, and it's people that like have basically come out of nowhere. I mean, some people are, should probably be there, but
so I'm not gonna name this. I don't even care. I don't even know who this promoter is, but it's Pro International. It is not a pro show. Not every athlete's getting paid, and it's not international because the weight classes aren't even recognized by 99% of the world.
That's the other thing that like I've never understood why USS ever went with powerlifting type weight classes.
I can tell you that, but we're not going to get into the politics on here. I know exactly why that happened. There's some legal things involved.
Okay, I mean,
I'm not getting in the middle.
You don't need to say any more there.
Yeah, there is legal things involved though. But the thing is it's like opening up a restaurant and naming it the best super delicious food ever. You can't just say that. You can't just say these things.
Shit.
Yeah, exactly. You can't just say it's a thing. And Luke Davis, for instance, he refuses to call it the Chaos Show Pro Show, even though it's the highest caliber of 90K athletes in the world. It's not a pro show. He knows it's not a pro show. That at most it's an international show, but he's still not claiming it. It's the Kaos Classic, and he's trying to build a staple with that name. He's not trying to fill it with all of these names and create all of these things so people like, you know what I'm saying? It's like our last president, no one name him, but he would just go around and start telling people how amazing it is. And that's just not how it works. You can't just say you are this thing and you're just this thing now.
Everyone's saying it though.
Oh yeah, right. Tremendous. But anyways, it's the same thing with these federations, man. Just because they say they're doing it, it's just not how it works. So and going back to Strongman Corporation, I do love the direction they're taking things, even with the upgrade of their website and stuff like that. And I think they have a council. I think they're coming to some type of realization about the status of what a pro card is, what it is to be a pro. There's some interminglings with it and stuff like that. It's very unsure at this point, but
Yeah.
I do appreciate the effort that's being made in Strongman Corporation,
Sure.
where effort isn't recognized or noticed in a lot of other promoters and organizations. To
I
say
think Strongman Corp has some new, well, maybe not new per se, but some very good people getting involved now at the top.
I 100% agree. I really do.
And that has made some good. No, that's a whole can of worms.
That's a whole nother podcast.
No, I think James Deffenbaugh is definitely very heavily involved. I don't know exactly what.
I do believe he stepped up, dude. James is like everything.
Dude, I fucking love James. I started Strongman with James.
He's he's been around forever.
Super great guy. And so his involvement is certainly having a very positive impact. I love that they've opened America's Strongest Man up to beyond just the pros, because I always kind of felt like that they were insulating themselves from competition. Like there's so many people out there that can still push those guys at the top and actually even beat a lot of them that were just eliminated from the competition. And suddenly they became this like elite, or I don't even, elite's not even the right word, but
exclusive,
kind of like exclusive, exactly, club where they get to like play at pro and not compete against anybody else. And it was like, it never made any sense to me. Like, you just eliminated a shitload of competition from these guys. Yeah. Like, what the hell? So, I mean, I really like that change.
Yeah, I overall, I know we've done a lot of bashing. I do believe that the direction the sport is going, not just from my contributions. I'm not saying I'm the leading cause, but I do think the sport as a whole is going in a really good direction. It's growing so fast. I can notice, I've seen it so many different ways, from my members to the amount of athletes I've gained over the years and stuff like that, though. And I do believe that there is more standardization happening. I don't think it's at the pace I would like it to be. I think we definitely need to make a push and be a little more outspoken with the things we like and don't like about what's going on.
Agreed. Yeah. 100%. Hey, we usually try to keep these under an hour, or at an hour.
Oh, dude, I'm starving. Let's go.
Yeah. Any final? Go ahead, John.
I was going to say final words. Also, tell people the date of the, what's it called? The North Texas Strength Expo.
Yes. This will be my closing. Everybody, August 19th at the Mesquite Convention Center is going to be the North Texas Strength Expo. It's going to be one of a kind. Headlining the entire expo is going to be the OSG Southwest Regional Championship. And we're going to have powerlifting, Moss wrestling, sumo wrestling, Highland Games. It's going to be a really exciting competition. It's something I'm going to try to bring to DFW every single year and grow every single year bigger and better each time. So it's something I've been pouring a lot of time into, and something I've been wanting to do for many years now, and it's finally happening.
Very awesome, man.
Yeah.
Dude, it was awesome having you here. Great talk. Wish you all the best with the promotions, and I mean, we'll be watching closely.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Support us on Patreon or Anchor, and find us on Instagram or Facebook.